Howdy, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the video. We're looking at why Australia's suburbs are so hot. We all know that Australia is one of the hottest continents in the world, I should say. Sorry about that. And yeah, some of the temperatures in certain areas blow my mind. Much hotter than the USA, for example, as a whole. We're looking at this video from ABC News in depth, and we're going to see why some of the suburbs are extremely hot. Let's get right to it, guys. Here we go.
I'm in one of about 30 parking lots in Marsden Park, just 50 kilometres northwest of Sydney's CBD. 10 years ago, this used to be farmland, green to grey.
Look at that change.
Looking around, you don't see many trees, making spaces like this really good at trapping heat.
Okay, so right away, I don't want to interrupt this too much, but there's a lot of this I feel like is going to relate to the U.S. right now. You have a lot of insanely growing cities and more so metro areas, the greater metro area, the suburbs around them. And, this is the trend over here as well. Put up all these stores and malls and then big black parking lots or car parks, as you might say. You just have these, new roads and new parking lots and new homes or new neighborhoods pop up everywhere. But there's barely any trees, right? There's usually turf or rocks and there's just not many trees, and there's these big parking lots. And you know what that does? The sun's out, all that dark colored ground that replaced the natural ground before it, kind of absorbs all of the heat and then radiates this just really hot environment. I assume that's what they're going to talk about because they keep showing the ground. And you can imagine how hot this is. I'm sure you could fry an egg where he's standing right there.
Light-coloured, unshaded concrete can be 60 degrees, while unshaded asphalt can get as hot as 75 degrees.
And that's Celsius, so I know that's a lot.
Parking lots like these are just one reason why this part of the city is so much hotter than the rest.
Yeah.
Right now we're driving through what's called an urban heat island. That's where the temperatures are much hotter than country areas because of how the land's been modified.
Right.
When you replace bushland with buildings, you lose those porous surfaces that take up rainwater, evaporate it, and generate a cooling effect. It's usually hotter here than it is in the city, by an average of 4 degrees over the past 30 years.
Wow, that's insane. And he's talking 4 degrees Celsius, so that's a lot. That's even more in Fahrenheit, what I'd be used to. That's what's interesting is I can throw my 2 cents in right here. Right now, as some of you might know, we live in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And between Las Cruces and El Paso, they're right next to each other, sister cities. That's how it is. When you are downtown in the valley, right? Because they're surrounded by mountains. But when you are in the valley, where all the blacktop is, all the parking lots are, all the shopping, it is so hot. And then when you get up, not even in the mountains, just when you get up towards the virgin desert, usually 3 to 5, maybe even 6 degrees Fahrenheit cooler. So it still feels hot if it's a hot day, but there's an extra element that's gone. It's not too hot. Whereas in the valley by all the blacktop, it is so hot. So I can already relate to this.
In this part of the city, the culprit is hot air from the desert.
Sydney is on the coast, but it's located close to one of the largest desert areas in the world. The inland desert is a cradle of strong, hot winds and a massive heat source. The cool air from the ocean reaches about as far as Parramatta. Everywhere beyond that feels the blast of hot air from the desert to the west.
That makes sense. So if you're close enough to the coastline, you have that nice, more, I don't know if it'd be a Mediterranean climate there, but it's more of a mild, predictable and constant climate. Not too cold, not too hot. But the more inland you go, creeping towards the desert, that desert air starts mixing in and I assume really heats it up.
That's not just in Sydney. Adelaide and Melbourne experience a similar effect.
Right.
So the further cities expand away from the coast, the hotter they become.
Wow, it was cool seeing all the solar panels. That's a good thing. You know what's funny? When I see these Australian neighborhoods, it's across the world. Australia's literally across the world from the United States, but compared to almost most countries, where neighborhoods and houses would look a lot different, right? Australian neighborhoods are probably the most familiar to me because Australia is really big and the US is really big, and I feel like some of your newer neighborhoods look very similar to newer American neighborhoods as well.
Further, the CBD acts like a heat dome. The high density of concrete and asphalt stops the sea breeze in its tracks, blocking the cooler air from reaching the suburbs that are directly west of the CBD.
So the outer suburbs are hotter because of their location, but there are some things that make the heat worse. Asphalt and concrete are major culprits, and they're everywhere.
They absorb solar radiation from the sun during the day, convert it into thermal energy, and release it back out as heat. Because darker materials generally absorb more light, they also emit more heat.
And lighter
Black
colors like
material
white
is the
reflect
ultimate light
heat.
absorber. It absorbs all light on the visual spectrum, converting it into heat so it becomes warm. But when you look at anything white, you're seeing all visible light hitting the object's surface and reflecting back.
That's right.
Meaning the temperature doesn't increase much.
Here in New Mexico, they have to almost every single house is Adobe or Pueblo style, and it has flat roofs, and the roofs are definitely painted white. Like our whole neighborhood, like almost all the roofs are white because it's so hot. That sun is so hot here that you have to have it be white. If you had a black roof, you would just be screwing yourself. It'd be so hot.
I'm meeting up with Sebastian Fauch from Western Sydney University, who's spent the past decade studying urban heat in Western Sydney.
So what makes an area like this hotter than other areas?
So you can see already in this area we have lots of hard infrastructure. Just have a look at your side here. You find that natural turf has been replaced with plastic, with synthetic grass, which is really hot.
Here. It's all
we see that
gravel
driveways
yards
get
or
painted
rock.
dark. It's very fashionable at the moment. That of course leads to a higher surface temperature. And then you see things happening where you have a front yard but you don't have a tree anymore. Or you have a front yard that is replaced with pebbles.
Let's zoom out a little.
Seems like
Using
it's a trend.
near-map analysis of aerial imagery,
Really weird.
you can see heat vulnerability
Jeez.
across the city.
Look at the severe
In other
heat.
words, areas that are more exposed to increasing urban heat. As it turns out, heat inequality goes hand in hand with wealth inequality.
Oh no.
This shows how wealth is distributed in Sydney. Blue is the wealthiest.
Let me guess. Yeah, blue. All the rich houses and people are in these nice, neighborhoods right by the coast. They got a nice moderate climate. And I guess they're going to say that everyone else who can't afford that is stuck inland, far away from the beach and in that desert heat, basically.
Notice the average income for Palm Beach in Sydney's north was $141,000.
That's
Red
a lot.
shows the least wealthy. The average income in Emu Plains, a suburb of Penrith, was less than half of that, at $59,000.
That's a lot of disparity.
Let's put those two maps side by side. Look familiar?
Look at that.
On any bright sunny day in summer, areas around here are at least 4 degrees hotter than the coastal north.
Wow.
We met up with Anoop, who lives in Sydney's northwest. It's so hot here and so overdeveloped that Anoop is thinking about moving somewhere with more trees.
Jeez.
Last summer, we had temperatures of 48, 49 on this road.
48 or 49? Holy smokes. What is that in Fahrenheit? That's well over 100. Holy crap. 49 Celsius is 120 Fahrenheit? Geez, Sydney suburbs get hella hot. 49 C. Wow, guys. That is dangerous. I like hot weather more than cold, right? But wow, that is dangerous. Geez, the only place you see 120 in the U.S. might be for sure Phoenix, some parts of Arizona. I don't know if parts in Texas get that hot. Florida definitely doesn't get that hot. Maybe Las Vegas, Palm Springs in California, but geez, that's about it. I mean, 120 is crazy, dude.
I never had issues of anxiety and depression. Heat has got me into anxiety and depression.
Oh no.
Heat effects. Where do I go? Where do I walk? Come in, have a look inside the house.
While his home has
I
air
don't blame him.
conditioning,
That's
it's
dangerous.
too expensive to run all summer. To save on energy, the whole family gathers in one room.
Currently, we are 3 generations and 5 members. We stay together, eat together, make it so that we help each other to go past that issues of the heat affecting you mentally, psychologically.
For the most vulnerable, heat can be deadly.
Prolonged heat exposure increases the number of people being hospitalised and increases the number of ambulances being called out.
That makes sense.
Really, everyone is vulnerable to heat waves, particularly babies, young children, pregnant women, the elderly, those with chronic diseases.
Hey, at least y'all have the beach to cool off. Here in southern New Mexico, the ocean is 8 hours away, so I am in the middle of the desert. There's like no water here at all. There is a lake about an hour north of here. That's about it. There is like no water. So I guess if you could try and flip a positive out of this, you got the beach, but still, that is hot, man.
In terms of natural disasters, it's Australia's biggest killer, taking more lives over the past 100 years than floods and fires combined.
That is scary.
In 2009, 374 people died across metropolitan Melbourne in one heat wave, more than Victoria's annual road toll.
Even in Melbourne?
So it is underestimated. You have people who are not cognizant, who are older.
I thought Melbourne was on the cooler side, like almost like a very mild climate. I didn't even know that they got crazy heat waves down there too. Jeez, all of Australia's hot, man.
Who might not feel
or
that
can be
they
hot, I
are
should say.
getting dehydrated.
People
you gotta
living
stay
in warmer
hydrated.
areas of
Big
Western
time.
Sydney have a 6% higher risk of heat-related death than those living in East Sydney. And those
Wow,
numbers
that's
could get a
wild.
whole lot worse. Climate
Yeah.
change has warmed Australia by about 1.5 degrees
Yeah.
since the early 1900s.
Same here.
Even if global 2030
It's only
targets are
getting
met,
hotter.
it'll warm up by about another 2 degrees by 2100.
I think Australia is going to keep getting hotter, at least for the time being, right? Unless we figure something out. Because I know down here last year I kept seeing stuff, even our Pacific Northwest, like Idaho and Seattle, Washington and stuff, we're seeing like 120-degree days. That's not common, but it happens. And I think they think in the next couple of years, it's going to be normal to have like 130-degree Fahrenheit days in Phoenix. So it's crazy, man. It is crazy how hot it can get these
that
days.
heat is going to get a whole lot worse.
And I think all these cities and suburbs have to do about it. Yeah, what can we do about it?
Apart from missing out on the cool coastal breeze,
One of the contributors to excess heat is tree coverage.
plants are what connect this map of heat with this map of wealth inequality. Marsden Park, a middle-income suburb, has 1% tree coverage, while very wealthy parts in the north have more than 60%.
Oh,
Across Sydney, the average
Okay, get a look at that.
very wealthy parts in the north have more than
Okay, that's insane, the difference. But that's how it is. That is really how it is. I have to say, I've seen this all over the U.S., especially here in the Southwest where it's so hot. You just see neighborhoods where it's like there's no trees, and it's like, what is going on? We need trees to help shade, for one, and help cool it down. But that's so common to see these big neighborhoods with just houses everywhere and blacktop everywhere, and they're just boiling hot, and there's no trees. Like, what is going on with that?
60%. Across Sydney,
Of course the one on the
average
right's
is
gonna
about
be cooler.
26%. The government plans to plant 1 million trees across the country by 2022, but they take time to mature.
They do.
The most obvious benefit from
It's a great first step, but it's going to take a long time before those trees really help out.
trees is that they provide shade, and that lowers surface temperatures.
Of course.
But something we don't see is a process called evapotranspiration.
That's when trees release water vapor into the atmosphere, which in turn cools the air.
Right.
Why are trees important when we're talking about heat?
They shade the surface and they also evaporate water, which cools down air temperature. We see, particularly in these new master planned communities, very, very little tree cover.
Yeah.
It's all concentrated in the streets. Of course, everything's so close together, the tree cannot grow up and develop a canopy. And that's what we're seeing around here. You find lots of very young trees.
Yeah, you see this neighborhood they're in? Where the hell is the shade, right? Look at all the way down behind them, down that whole street. There's no shade.
Small trees.
At all.
They're great in 20 years, but in 20 years we already had 20 years of summers with heat waves.
Right.
Now, I don't want you
point.
to think this is just a Sydney problem.
In fact,
No.
Melbourne is the greyest city in all of Australia, with just 23% total tree cover. Take a look at the new suburbs like Tarneet and Mernda that have replaced farmland on Melbourne's outskirts. There are nowhere near enough new trees to replace a fraction of the lost green cover.
Look at the difference. Wow.
Perth is only slightly better, with 27% tree coverage. Hobart and Canberra were the only two cities that had more green cover in 2020 than in 2013.
Wow.
So, choose the right tree, make sure it's got water, all that's left, where to put it. You'll notice most of the houses in the new suburb of Marsden Park take up most of the block. That leaves little room to plant a large tree.
One of the biggest problems that we see is that you build massive houses on very small blocks. There's just very little land left to provide any cooling, any green infrastructure, anything like a backyard. The space between homes becomes very, very small. You might sometimes end up with a meter from one wall to the next, and the eaves of houses come so close together that they're only half a meter apart.
Wow.
Hot air will just pool in these areas.
The average plot size in metropolitan areas around Australia has dropped significantly, from about 600 square metres in 2005 to 460 in 2020.
Wow. That's insane.
Plots in Sydney shrank the most, by about 32% since 2005.
Jeez.
But the average floor area has stayed relatively consistent, going from 234 square metres to 248 within a 15-year period.
So slightly bigger houses, but
is building
smaller
a big
lots.
house, not a big garden.
Look at how tight those are,
Those
man.
new suburbs on the outskirts of Australia's cities also have something else in common.
Jeez.
This is the colour that's synonymous with Australian suburbia. Unfortunately, dark roof tiles don't protect homes from heat.
No. That's one thing I'm surprised about. They know it's so hot in Australia, that sun is so blistering hot there, especially around Sydney. That's one thing I'm surprised. If I had to criticize this, right, big time, is why are the houses all almost dark colored? Or I'm sorry, why are the roofs dark colored? They should be, at least here in the Southwest, they usually make the roofs white, especially here in New Mexico, which is smart. I'm not sure why they're not going with a lighter color over there. That's kind of shocking.
Like asphalt and concrete, they're very good at absorbing heat and releasing it at night. Ditching dark roofs altogether could cause temperatures in all of Sydney to drop by up to 2.4 degrees.
See?
A light-coloured
Good
roof
idea.
could reduce temperatures inside by up to 4 degrees on
Exactly.
average, and 10 degrees during a heat wave.
That's the thing here. They paint them white, and all the houses here, no matter how cheap or expensive they are, all of them have high ceilings. Usually 12 to 15 foot ceilings here, because all that it helps keep the house cooler. And between the high ceilings and the white roof, it really helps combat a really hot climate.
Another solution that's being trialled is pretty simple: paint. Painting this stuff on black asphalt can reduce surrounding temperatures by more than 4 degrees. It's a reflective surface sealant that prevents materials from absorbing heat. And it's being used all over the world in places like...
Look at that. Wow. Now, I haven't seen that near me, but it makes sense that you would have to use it here in our Southwest, even in LA, which isn't as hot as the deserts of New Mexico and Arizona and Texas. But still, that's a good idea. It's kind of interesting,
Los
right?
Angeles, and now here.
There you
About
go.
15,000 square metres of road and car park surfaces were coated with the stuff. Compared to uncoated surfaces, temperatures were an average of 6 degrees lower.
No kidding, that's a
but
lot.
It's no silver bullet. So we're standing on a road that's been coated with Cool Seal. Is that an effective way to deal with heat problem?
It is and it is not, as most of the things have two sides. It does help to cool surface temperature down, so it does have an effect on the surface heat island effect.
Okay.
We weren't able to really establish that the streets that you can see here helped to cool down ambient air temperature, which of course is the one parameter that really affects human thermal comfort. We have to apply these kind of technologies at a very large scale to see effects.
Right.
Much of the city. Councils and governments aren't likely to rip out roads and footpaths anytime soon.
Right.
And building codes are notoriously complex. So putting it all together, trees, paint, tiles, what's the best solution?
Start with the trees.
Yeah,
but that
trees
means
are
you
your
also
best
need to
bet,
address
I
the
guess.
houses to provide the space. So it's interlinked. It's not that easy that you could just put one aspect forward or one mitigation strategy forward. You really need to look at it holistically.
Yeah.
And that means we're looking at colors, materials, we're looking at even road surfaces.
There are lots of options to address heat, but they need to be looked at holistically. As our cities continue to expand, our outer suburbs shouldn't be pushed to the edge.
Wow. I think that's going to be it, right? I believe so. Very interesting, huh? I thought that was very interesting. It's crazy to see this. A lot of this was very similar to some trends that are happening in the USA here as well. So very interesting to see, like, you know, all this farmland just pop up in a matter of like 5 or 6 years and just be immensely dense suburbs, like so crowded with these crazy parking lots and big shopping centers, and then these really crazy big neighborhoods with houses just sardined in, like sardines in a can, right? Like so packed in there. It's really, really crazy. And this is obviously a trend in suburbs in Australia. It's a trend here in the US. It's really crazy, and it is changing the weather, because in your hot places that have always been hot, it's making them even hotter because of this stuff. It's really a weird effect. The lack of trees is the biggest thing, because that happens over here too, and it's really weird to me why they wouldn't think of, you know, using lighter color materials and for one, just having a lot of trees, right? Like, why is it so bare? So with that being said, guys, tell me what you think of this. Have you been affected by this? Do you agree with this? Definitely tell me your thoughts down below. I can't wait to see what you guys have to say. Please throw a thumbs up on this video. Help it out if you enjoyed it and maybe learned something from it. Tell me your ideas to help combat this as well down below. Subscribe and join our amazing community, and look for more awesome videos like this one. This will be linked down below in the description from ABC, and you can also check the description out for other ways you can interact with my channel. My name is Ian. You're watching IWrocker. Until next time, guys, stay cool, and I'll catch you later.